He always believed that if you get married, you must fully commit to it. Cliff Richard loved one woman for 50 years, but she married his best friend, then married another man, and eventually died in Cliff's arms. Cliff never married, never had children, and kept singing while hiding one of the biggest heartbreaks in British music. When police raided his home in 2014, it wasn't the first time he was hurt. The BBC had already made a secret deal. The accusations were false, but the damage was real. He lost weight, got shingles, couldn't sleep, and said his own house felt contaminated. The man who once filled Wembley Stadium was now scared to leave his home. Cliff was born on October 14, 1940, in King George's Hospital in Lucknow, British India. The world was at war and India was fighting for independence. In 1946, riots broke out during Direct Action Day, and British families began leaving the colony, including Cliff's family. His father worked in the colonial system, but by 1948 the empire was collapsing. They left on a crowded ship called the SS Ranchi. The trip took 3 long weeks with hundreds of British families fleeing the only home they knew. When they reached England, life was cold and difficult. His family lived in a small house in Surrey, far from the comfort they once had. But this tough beginning pushed him to work harder and dream bigger. Soon, Harry Webb changed his name after advice from manager Harry Greatrix. He said he needed a name that sounded strong like rock music. He suggested Cliff, like a cliff face, and Richard, in honor of Little Richard. That's how Cliff Richard was born, and he changed British music forever. On August 29, 1958, he released Move It. It was loud, raw, and rebellious, nothing like the polite pop songs of that time. Cliff was only 18, and the song hit number 2 on the UK charts, sending shockwaves through the country. For the first time, British teenagers had their own rock star. This song opened the door for every British band that came after, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and more. His concerts created total chaos. Girls screamed and fainted, boys got jealous, and security couldn't control the crowds. Newspapers called it Cliff hysteria. In 1959, he released Living Doll, a song he didn't even like at first, but it stayed at number 1 for 6 weeks and sold 770,000 copies. Soon he was selling over 1 million records, something no one in Britain had done before. He even moved into acting with films like Serious Charge and Espresso Bongo. In 1963, Summer Holiday became a huge hit. The soundtrack was number 1 for 14 weeks, and Cliff was voted the most popular film star in the UK. Then came the Beatles, but Cliff held his ground. Even in 1964, at the height of Beatlemania, Cliff had more top 10 hits than they did. The Beatles themselves admitted Cliff had paved the way. John Lennon once said that before Cliff and Move It, there was nothing worth listening to in England. In 1966, Cliff made a surprising announcement. He stood on stage next to American evangelist Billy Graham and publicly said he had become a Christian. Fans were shocked. Some thought his career was finished. Even Cliff wondered if he should quit music. But he stayed, and he became the first British pop star to openly live his faith while staying successful. He later said that becoming a Christian made him more confident and helped him be his true self. By the mid-70s, his career slowed down. In 1975, he had no songs in the charts for the first time. But in 1976 he released Devil Woman, a darker rock song that became a huge hit. It brought him back into the spotlight, and even rock legends like Eric Clapton and Elton John supported him. Cliff continued to reinvent himself. In 1987, he released the album Always Guaranteed, which became a platinum success. In 1988, he released Mistletoe and Wine, which became the biggest UK single of the year. In 1989, he released his 100th single, something no other British artist had done. His Wembley concert that year was massive, and he became the only singer in history with number 1 hits across 5 decades. In 1999, the Millennium Prayer faced resistance from radio stations that refused to play it, saying he was too old. But fans fought back. Without major airplay, the song still reached number 1 for 3 weeks, proving his power and the loyalty of his fans. His personal life held deep emotional stories too. In 1971, Cliff met Olivia Newton-John on his TV show. Their bond lasted over 50 years. Cliff later admitted he had fallen in love with her, but she was engaged to his bandmate Bruce Welch at the time. Their situation was complicated, but Cliff and Olivia stayed close friends and performed together for decades. Their final duet was in 2015 during Cliff's 75th birthday show. When Olivia died in 2022, Cliff was devastated. He said she hadn't died, she had simply stopped living. On August 14, 2014, everything changed again. Cliff was in Portugal when he saw live coverage of police raiding his UK home. The BBC and South Yorkshire Police had coordinated the raid in secret and broadcast it worldwide. Cliff was shocked and terrified. The allegations were false, but the damage was massive. For almost 2 years, the police investigated him based on a claim from a man who later turned out to be unreliable. The room he described didn't even exist in 1985. Officers who were with Cliff the entire night at the event were never interviewed. The case cost taxpayers $800,000 and led to zero charges. Meanwhile, Cliff suffered emotionally and physically. He fell into depression, couldn't sleep, lost weight, and felt unsafe in his own home. A man even tried to blackmail him right after the raid, proving how extreme the situation had become. In the end, Cliff won $400,000 from the police and millions more in damages from the BBC. The judge ruled the BBC's actions were sensationalistic and violated his privacy. This case changed how the media is allowed to report on police investigations in the UK. But for Cliff, it was never just about money. It was about clearing his name. He said he felt smeared and feared people would always wonder about him, even though no evidence was ever found. He lost 2 years of his life and carried trauma that couldn't simply be healed by a court ruling. Even after winning, he said he would never fully forget what happened or how it changed him.